pester people with random things.
I was telling everyone that when Jared and I went on vacation to what on earth is that noise?
Whoa.
We don't even have Brent online.
What is going on?
Do you hear that, Alex? Do you hear that like crazy, I don't know, like people pouring coffee on microphones noise?
Yeah, it's like somebody crunched a wrapper right in front of the mic.
Oh. That may have been me. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you maybe stop doing that?
Yeah, just turn off Alex. We don't need him.
Well, wait, is it still doing that noise?
No, but it was very loud. Do we have Brent? Was that the call?
Hey, yes, I'm here. Now, can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, actually, that is better.
That is better.
Yeah. That's good enough to go with.
That's not as awesome as I would like it to be, but it's acceptable.
You're just humoring me. I get it.
Yeah, turn Brent down a little. Brent's a little loud.
Somehow we lost the recording of that episode, and it never made it online.
All right, yeah, let's go. Go ahead, put us live, and we'll fix everything in post.
Okay, let me do the introduction. I want to do the introduction.
Okay, but wait,
before we... What's the introduction?
Podcast 28.
Wait, I'm doing it.
Okay, but...
Yeah, Stack Exchange. Wait, this is Stack Exchange Podcast 28 with Jeff, Joel, sometimes Alex when Joel will let him speak, and our special guest, Brent Ozar, as we call him, Sequel Ninja.
Yes, I'm a professional recording artist through poor
Brent O.
Yes. Actually, I believe the technical term is database ninja. I don't want to limit you to just sequel because I know you have a lot of weapons. You have nunchucks. You have a sai. You have...
I don't show them all off, but I just, pull them all out when exactly the moment is right. Yes.
Before we start with all the sequel stuff, I didn't get to finish telling my story.
Okay, go ahead.
So my story is that Jared and I were on vacation. Oh, I have to go back in time because now this is going live, right? Do they hear us? Do the people hear us? Do you hear us? I want to make sure we're live.
Yeah, we got confirmation from our chat room.
The people that good, but Abby is sitting right next to me. That doesn't count. I want somebody like in the wide world of the internet to say that they hear us. And also, I need a better trailer for next week, please. Thanks. So Alex is allegedly working from home today, although he does seem to be in sunny California. And in order to ensure that he works from home and doesn't go on vacation, I have been pestering him every half hour, but I'm kind of running out of ways to pester him.
2 pesterings. You pestered me for 2 things.
3 or 4. And I was reminded of when Jared and I went on vacation to Tokyo. So it was like 2 a.m. and his cell phone rings and we wake up and he groggily picks it up and his boss is calling and his boss says, should I get a grande or a venti? So what's the difference anyway?
Nice.
So anyway, that's what I've been asking. I've been doing a lot of grande venti pestering of Alex. That story has nothing to do with what we were talking about before. Why did you let me tell that story?
I don't know. You asked to tell it.
God only knows.
It was like stuck in my brain like a incomplete toilet flush. I just get it out.
I can't understand why you're not on primetime network TV yet. I don't get it.
Yeah, the other day I figured out that we have almost as much United States viewers on Stack Overflow as Univision.
Oh,
right. Like if we were a TV network, we would be
newscast at night. We'd be set.
If we were a TV network, we would be Univision.
Cool. Wait, was that your Spanish accent?
It's just the name of the TV network, Univision.
I thought you speak Spanish just by adding O to the end of every word.
Univision.
And L at the beginning. Yep. L stack over. Oh, we see you already got the flow at the end. So L stack overflow.
El Stacco.
Does.
Well,
actually, I haven't
looked
speaking. Actually, going on topic just for a moment, I apologize. If you go to SpanishStackExchange.com, did that go yet?
Yes, it did. And it's a lot of people asking questions about gardening for some reason.
I see. Okay, good.
I don't know if it's going to really work out that well.
To the language topic.
I mean,
because that was strangely enough, that was one of the last ones to go through, which surprised me.
Of the languages?
Yeah.
We were talking about that, Jeff. We were talking a little bit about the languages in the community call last week. We're having a couple of problems here, but actually the quality of these sites, of all the language sites that we have, German, Japanese, Spanish, French, and Spanish, and German, and Japanese. Is that 7? Anyway, they're all pretty bad. And, part of the problem is that they're really learning sites. Given that they're in English, this is essentially not Spanish language. This is learning Spanish. Right. And so at some point we may have to recognize that in the...
Okay. Hold on, we're getting a lot of mic noise off someone.
In the charter. It's got to be Alex. And then the second thing is the second issue. So the second thing is that it's extremely odd to have a site where you learn a language that is not conducted in that language, where the questions are in English, and yet it's supposed to be for learning French. And so we were actually going to try and experiment with French, given that it's such a tiny site, where we would just sort of let them do what they've always wanted, which is conduct the site in French. I mean, all the questions would be in French on the
Isn't that how
itself.
you learn anyway? I mean, just immerse them into it, throw them into it.
Exactly. I mean, there isn't a first-year French class in the world where you would where it would be acceptable
English.
to talk in English. Yeah, even the first month of class.
Oh yeah, immersion. That's how you learn.
Oh my God, our number one question: how to say good morning in French? Like these sites are problematic anyway. So essentially, these sites are not really
Por favor.
working so well. We might as well take one and sacrifice at the altar of see what happens if we let them just acquire French.
Okay. I don't really have any objection to that. Although the official policy, as I recall, was that it was officially a mixture. You could have some questions that were purely in the language.
Sure.
It was just supposed to be a mixture. But
I think what's happening is...
do you want to enforce the other way around? Do you want to enforce it like you can't have it in English? That's the only decision that makes sense to me.
If the community wants to do that, then I think they should. And it's the French community that most wants that, or the French site. Just because otherwise, I mean...
That's what they should do.
Yeah, if you look at the... if you actually look at the questions that are conducted in English, they're exactly like the bad homework questions that we just delete from Stack Overflow, right? Like these are people that just do not have the energy to compose an entire sentence in French because they are so lazy about their learning of French that they can't even figure out how to attempt to ask their question in French itself.
Right.
Well, and if you want it to be universal, I mean, it should be, the whole site should be conducted in the language that you want to learn. Because otherwise, you're going to have questions on the Spanish site. You're going to have questions in French, Italian, Portuguese, English.
Right. Theoretically.
Yeah. When the world domination plan takes effect.
We were. That was one of our goals. We will know. We know we have succeeded when there is a site in a language we've never even heard of, discussing a holiday that we've never heard of in a country we've never been to. Where there's an entire site for that. Whatever that interesting holiday is in Cambodia or something. Conducted in Khmer.
I thought you were going to say when it's all about porn. When you get the porn site, that's when you know you become successful. Sooner or later, everything devolves.
We do have human sexual response, but I don't ambivalent towards that.
Yeah, and
it's not really porn. That's not really
to put in a picture accompanying their question.
Well, hold on. Let me just make a point here about that, because porn would be entertainment, right? And that's not what we do. That would be like a Reddit, which is all meme images, which is indistinguishable from what's actually happening on Reddit anyway.
Yeah, but just do it on Reddit. Reddit's awesome.
Yeah. But a porn site would be that. It would be the equivalent of a bunch of meme images, pure entertainment. There's no reason to go there other than entertainment, whereas human sexual response is like, look, I actually want to learn about the topic, not just be amused and titillated, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Are you justifying the web filtering logs?
What's that?
Are you just justifying the web filtering logs? Is that where you're spending all your time these days?
Possibly. No, mostly I've been playing a lot of Battlefield 3. You can look me up as Coding Horror on Origin. You can see I've put in, I think, 90 hours so far. So that's a lot.
Oh, man.
It's like 4 full days. A lot. But that's okay. I was waiting 5 years for that game to come out. Wow. Speaking of gaming, I do want to talk about, because gaming has had a truly spectacular rise. Did you see on Meta, Joel, somebody, Badpa, put up a graph and he annotated it with when games came out?
Yeah.
Like the little peaks and troughs.
I did not see it. Was that metagaming?
Yeah, gaming meta.
Yeah.
It's about, can we share Kwong? I'll look it up and you can link it in the show notes, Alex.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I want to make a minor complaint. Like, I have said this should go in the show notes, and then stuff has not gone in the show notes. So can we write that down so it gets done?
Put that in the show notes.
So the show notes should say, every time that somebody says, we'll put that in the show notes, that the thing should go, got it.
Hopefully.
Yes.
We'll or maybe I make a special sound like when they used to do blue boxing, I'll make a certain tone.
A very high-pitched sound so that we can find it.
They go, ooh, yeah, and then you just search the transcript for that sound, and then okay, that's the period to do it. But I do want people to see this graph, because I want people to understand that gaming is, obviously entirely driven by these hit games, but not just hit games in general, but particular hit games that actually match our Q&A model. In other words, the games are they have to be really complicated, first of all. Nobody really has that many questions about Modern Warfare, because let me tell you how to play Modern Warfare. Put cursor over guy, click mouse, he fall down.
Well, sometimes it helps to click the left mouse or whatever the left button is.
You,
I
you
have
want
an
to click
Xbox.
the right mouse button first so that it zooms in, and then you click the left mouse.
So
button.
it's really
no
subtle.
disrespect to Modern Warfare, but it's just you can't really compare
There's
the
not that many
super
questions.
complicated. It has an economy, right? The RPGs have an economy. You have races, you have like relationships, you have inventory, you have stats, you have like just an incredible amount of stuff going on in the game. It's like a world.
But this, I don't understand this post because this is from before Skyrim, and after Skyrim, we had something like a 15-fold increase in traffic to gaming.
Skyrim is about to overtake StarCraft as with most questions on the site. In fact,
But it's not even. I mean, just in terms of views, it's absolutely insane. It's Skyrim itself has 1.3 million views right now on Skyrim questions. 1.35 million
And
views.
it does
It's actually about the size of Server Fault, if I'm not mistaken, temporarily.
right.
Well, and it's done that in 10 days.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
On one weekend, really, it just sort of surged to Server Fault size on that one game.
Well, it's kind of like when Windows is released. There was a big. I remember How2Geek telling me when Windows 7 came out, their traffic like doubled. You know, any of these marquee events, and you got to realize this game matches what we do really well. I don't think all games do. Some do, some don't, and that's okay because we've said we're not trying to solve all the world's problems, just the ones that actually fit on our engine.
Right, like The Witcher, Skyrim, Portal, StarCraft. Actually, Portal. How many questions can people ask about Portal?
There weren't that many Portal questions. There were some. I mean, it was definitely on the graph, but compared to RPG. Well, like Witcher is an RPG. Those types of games do really
Okay,
well.
nice post by Bad P, but it's missing all the latest data.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he'll update it. I
Okay,
trust
good.
Bad P in this regard to update all this. Bad P is a good man, and I'm sure he'll update it. But yeah, kudos to gaming, and we'll see what happens after the new year. Of course, once gaming season is over, how much legs Skyrim has and what other games come out.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting is I would have thought that there would be a big drop-off already in page views, but there wasn't. And one of the things that happens is the game comes out, we get a lot of Q&A on the topic of the game, and then we sort of own that category in Google for a long time. And so, because we were first with good questions and answers about
And
the game.
best, right? First and best, right?
First
The best
and
combination.
best. And so right now, I mean, I guess I could just post this in the show notes, but this is confusing. The page views on gaming has not really gone down that much from the
it
from the
stayed
peak.
remarkably high.
Yeah, the page views is almost at the peak, the daily peak.
Well, hopefully that's community building, right? People like the engine; they understand, And again, going back to my old crusty argument about Battlefield 3 Reddit, I like the Reddit, but it is a hugely flawed system. Like, I would much rather be on Gaming Stack Exchange because there's so much noise in that system.
Yeah.
So I think the people that we attract that see the system go, wow, this is really cool. It has a reputation system. There's badges, all the motivation stuff that we do, but also like, hey, the quality of information here is really high, and these people actually care. Like, the people on the site care about the quality of the information they're putting on the internet, whereas on Reddit it's like not so much. And we have standards, right? We have rules and standards, and that's why it's sort of a well-maintained subway line, if you will. It's very clean, it's efficient, it gets you to your destination, and that attracts what I like to call the right kind of user. So hopefully that's what we're seeing in effect there, and that's how you grow a community. So I'm encouraged, and gaming is really huge right now. If you go to stackexchange.com/sites, it's actually just under super user for visits per day, which is pretty amazing. So thank you. Who makes Skyrim? What company? I can't.
What company makes Skyrim?
Anyway, my thanks to insert
Bethesda?
company name here.
Bethesda,
I think
they say.
Bethesda. Thank you, Bethesda, for making this game.
Yeah. The other one, actually, if you look at the history of Ask Ubuntu, that did really well when a new Ubuntu release came out, and the big difference was not just that there was a new version of Ubuntu, but also that they incorporated Stack into their user interface somehow in some place. I don't really know the specifics. But that increased our traffic there from, typical days were 40,000 people, and now they're around 110,000 people.
Wait, what? Repeat that?
Ubuntu, when the new version of Ubuntu came
I
out.
thought you were talking about gaming. I was like, okay.
It's a new Ubuntu game. Okay. Yeah. Well, we have a special guest today with us.
That's right.
Hola.
It's Brento. Hey, Brento.
El Brento.
At Brento. At Brento. Now, Brent is single-handedly responsible for all of the sequel tuning
Oh, you are so
in the entire world.
Yeah. So much fun working with guys like you guys. I mean, I used to be a DBA, just, toiling away, slaving away in my dark corner. And it's just so much more fun now being a consultant and get to work with guys like you, build companies, pushing SQL Server to, the limits that you guys can do, what the hardware can do. So it's just a lot of fun.
Well, just wait until you find out how much the really boring defense contractors pay their consultants.
Oh,
and then your life is going to suck.
Clearly has nothing to do with talent. I've seen this. Yeah.
Well, no, but seriously, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast is that you recently did. Let's see. I guess you did a talk at a conference.
Yeah. Did Dev Connections happens twice a year out in Vegas or Orlando, and one of the top. I've always seen these case study sessions, and it's always been kind of boring because the sessions are usually about businesses nobody cares about.
It's usually somebody's paying to present them. Like the kind of business itself is paying to be the case study or something.
Yeah, and so I want to throw on something and just say, okay, look, this is how real world people do it that you're actually interested in, sites that you've used. And so I tried to get a session submitted with Kyle, actually, over at the Professional Association for SQL Server Conference. But we couldn't make the timing work. It was too close to you guys as the original Stack, the sysadmin conference. And so ended up doing it out here instead at Vegas, and got a lot of good questions from it. And people seem to take things away from it. So, but it's a lot of fun looking at how the old rules are also wrong for sites like this.
Yeah, I know. And you know what that says about the old people, like me and you and Jeff.
Hey, no. I question everything. I don't like any rules, man.
I don't know.
I'm from the show me state.
You know what you are? You're one of those sort of hippies that's kind of balding with a ponytail.
That's so not cool.
You're like, I am wearing a suit, but it's denim.
And there's a rainbow on the back and some stars.
With a rainbow on the back. And I got a Harley Davidson. It's really comfortable, actually. A really nice ride on the Harley. But it's still a Harley.
Volkswagen bus would have done it. But,
so that's on Brent's blog, which is at brentozar.com.
Yeah, so you did, I guess what you did is you did a video of sort of a slightly condensed version of that talk, internet ready. And you want to summarize some of it now? And you've squished it down from 1 hour and a half to 30 minutes. Can you give us the 1 minute version?
Yeah, the old rule was that, or there were 5 old rules. Everybody's the DB, or you have to have a great DBA on staff.
Oh, I never did that.
No, man, nobody did. I mean, people would buy whatever they could find, just try and shuffle somebody together, and then that guy was in way over his head, and you couldn't get him training and all this.
Yeah.
There was this whole, never reinvent the wheel. You should just use things that you can buy off the shelf. You should tune your queries. You should understand how, every single part.
Wait, are you saying the old rule was I should tune my queries? Are you saying I shouldn't tune my queries?
No, I tell people now, before you even start getting into this, how fast can I make this query? Why are you making the query to begin with?
Yeah.
There's all these things like Redis that just have totally changed the way programming works.
I'm sorry. I missed it. I saw you said there's always things like Reddit. Like, just don't write a query. Just go look at Reddit. There's pictures of funny cats.
That has changed the way working is working. But yeah,
Redis. So Redis is, we've talked about this in this podcast in the past, but for our listeners who have never heard of it, it's a caching server.
Yep. You have all these queries in your application that you're making continuously to get configuration data or static data, lists of users, drop downs for salespeople, for products.
Right.
And I go and I do these performance tuning engagements, and that's 90% of the load on the system.
Right.
And you just got to ask every time you want to see, all right, this is an intensive query on the system. Why are you even running it? How can we get around from putting it in the SQL Server? Because what's expensive is interpreting your query, finding out whether we already have an execution plan for that query, how we're going to join our tables together. Does anyone else have locks on this table? How do we render out the results and pass it under your application? Just do that once. Do it once and cache it and be done with it. And it's just everywhere, not just, the modern fancy websites that are doing this. Everybody needs to look at doing this if they want to scale. Because, man, when we weren't looking, SQL Server got expensive.
I know why that is, actually. It didn't really get expensive. The price went up. The price per core went up, but the cores are faster now. See, get it.
Yeah. So now with just one chip, you can run your whole data center.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
I know. I've tried.
Sure, you're going to be running it on a MacBook Air. It'll power the whole site, not a problem. It's just crazy. So for the people somebody asked in the chat, do people really query for lists of drop-down values in real time?
Yeah. What else would you do? How else would you do it? I mean, what? No.
Well, hold on. So the thing, I agree totally, and I think that's a really good point. Brent is really good at getting the heart of, and anyone who wants to tune their database, you should contact Brent, because what I love about him is he really does cut to the, you don't get the usual bullshit from consultants. It's like, why are you even doing this, right? That's the first question he'll ask, is like, this doesn't even make sense. Don't do this. Like, the fact that you're asking me this question says you're this isn't really the right way to do this, which is good. Like, question the question. Like, why is this even coming up? Not, let me help you fix this crazy thing you're doing that you shouldn't even be doing, but you're going to pay me $50 an hour to figure out. But like, stop doing that thing. But caching is tricky, because caching, cache syncing, right? That's one of the hardest problems, right? Like, it's fine to cache everything, but then you got to deal with how much do I care that data is not live? What happens when that data changes? How do I sync the data across, multiple servers if I need to do that? What happens when the data changes? What if multiple people are changing it? So cache coherency can become a problem, but obviously there's a lot of low value stuff where you really don't care if it's out of date, right? Like, who cares, right? Like, it just doesn't change that much.
Yeah. In the first pass you go in for tuning, when somebody doesn't have caching, the first 3 months of your work, and I say you meaning the programmers, the developers, the guys implementing this stuff, is just caching the stuff that's absolute raw no-brainers. The list of stores, the list of states, the list of countries, the list of products that only changes once a quarter, and you can change cache it for 24 hours and you're fine. It's just like query tuning. When I do get to the point where I'm working on indexes or query execution plans, whatever, the low-hanging fruit, that's 90% of the work right there. All of a sudden, you don't need to call anybody again for 6 months at least. Just do the first round of work, get the low-hanging fruit out, and that just makes an unbelievable difference. So that's one of the reasons why I tell people don't start tuning your queries yet. First, step back and ask, why am I making these queries, especially the expensive ones?
Yeah.
And you can put in a separate tier of report servers that are refreshed once a night, and usually the business users are fine with it. We just get so obsessed as developers and DBAs.
Well, that was actually kind of an old thing of separating your online transaction, your OLTP online transactions from the reporting services, where you would have like a data warehouse with a hypercube of some sort that the business types could query.
And everybody wants that now in production. They all go, we need the data real time. And if you just do the back of the envelope, sure, no problem, I can give it to you. It's going to be $500,000. Oh, okay, well, we can live with yesterday's data. All right.
A classic example of that is Google Analytics, which is now finally managed to get real-time data, and it winds up being a completely separate thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have to go in saying, this is what you can do feasibly with technology. This is what you can't do.
To sample it. Yeah.
Yeah. And separating load, that was another piece. That there's a lot of people out there doing XML shredding in SQL Server that are doing comparisons.
Shredding. What is XML shredding? That sounds like a bad thing.
Well, so people will, if you want to join, the classic example is you pick several things from a list. You say, I want to see all the sales from South Dakota, North Dakota, and Texas. Okay. And so you pass in 3 variables. You want to pass it into a stored procedure. But because SQL Server for the longest time wouldn't take lists as parameters, they'll build XML strings. And then,
oh, good God,
inside the stored proc, they will turn around and shred that XML back out in order to get the 3 values that somebody passed in.
XML of all things?
Hey,
Can't they just put like little pipes like I wrote in my answer a long time ago and got downvoted to oblivion?
Yeah, no.
Just use some character that doesn't occur in any state names. There will never be a horizontal pipe in the name of a state in the United States.
No, SQL even sucks at that. SQL sucks at string processing.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I've always wondered why they don't add more string processing functions to SQL Server, but I guess they're doing us a favor by teaching us not to let the database do our stuff.
Oh, so like now in SQL 2012, as it comes out, we get new functions to make things easier for programmers. The classic is,
finally.
Paging. Yeah, you think so, but so paging, like you get in MySQL, you get offsets of, give me the first 50 rows of this query, then I'm going to come back, I want to get the second 50 rows of this query. And so SQL Server will only send you the rows that you want. Well, what's
It's a
SQL Server
cursor.
behind the scenes? No, it's rendering the whole hunk and result set, and then it's just giving you the results that you need.
Which you were going to do anyway.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, get the whole freaking thing down into your app server.
Do you remember? Yeah. There was a time where they would tell us, listen, your database is really good at doing joins and queries and interesting things. Don't try to do them by yourself. Just let the database do that. It's super optimized to do. And especially the hard things where you're like sorting something by date to find, like when you're doing one of those queries that's next in time.
Yes, leading and
It's just
following.
like sort of almost impossible to do in any traditional SQL syntax that I know of.
Yeah. We
and
got that in 2012. We did get that finally.
That's great. And databases were invented in 1950. This is the relational model. It's from the 50s. So half a century, and we now have the ability to get the next record, which admittedly is not, I guess, goes very much against the spirit of databases, of the relational model.
You know, the stuff's in there. That should be something that the engine should be good at. You know, don't make it get the whole result set out to your app server in order to figure these things out. So.
Yeah.
But it was that. It was new-egging your way out of problems. You know, there used to be all these, don't separate your data and log files, separate temp DB, do all these things that you had to do because of the old-school magnetic disks being different for sequential
It was,
speed,
if I'm not mistaken, it was like a little disk that would spin. It was in a box. You put it in your computer, and there was a disk shaped like a Frisbee, essentially, that was magnetic, and it was spinning in there at 3,600 RPM.
You know, I used to tell people, I used to go through explanations and say, do you remember record players? But, you know, people are too young for that now. And so I finally come down to toilet paper rolls is what I use.
Is it paper roll?
Yeah, it spins around central. Yeah, that's what you got. It's like that Stack Overflow, or the, I guess it was super user question about what's the A and B drive for. Oh.
Yeah, that was a classic.
I feel old.
It's for code and data.
Yeah, so it's that. And, you know, these days you can go out and buy. I just did a project for about $75,000 worth of hardware off the shelf from HP, and we ended up with a terabyte of RAM and a terabyte of solid state in a mirrored pair. You know, so that's 2 terabytes of raw, and then ending up with a terabyte of usable.
Right.
And for that price, it's cheaper than you're going to hire a developer for a year to fix anything. And there's no code risk. You know,
well, now the developers are free.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good ones you have to buy sodas for. But.
We should post questions on Stack Overflow, you see, and somebody will answer it. Come along and help you with your problem.
Jeez, yeah. I still do think that there's a market for micro consulting. That I would love to be able to, when I run into certain problems that, you know, hey, I need this C# app to do this kind of thing, and I want to go directly to the person who has good answers for this kind of question. How do I hire them for 4 hours?
Odesk.
Yeah. But those aren't integrated with the reputation system that, like Stack Overflow and Serverflow. I don't know who these bozos are.
Yeah, they have their own reputation systems.
Well, one thing we have talked about is a gigs board but it's hard to imagine a situation where you're a freelancer, like a freelance programmer, because the spin up time is so painful. Like if we had to spin someone up on you know, a Stack Exchange project, I mean, we can do it, but it's a significant amount of effort just to get them where they can actually do something meaningful, right?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, that's true.
Well,
So it's challenging, like to say, okay, this is a 4-hour gig. Maybe. I don't know. I just wonder how big that market really is.
That's a really good point. You know, there was the master programmer idea, deeply discredited, where there would be one superstar programmer who would kind of sit around and write code, and then they would stub out any functions that they needed, and then you know, command one of their minions to implement that function. Yeah. And the model seemed like an interesting way to scale a programming team, and surprisingly never really worked in practice.
My angle is usually coming from, as a consultant, I get a lot of pieces of work that are, so I have a geo-clustering thing where somebody's got to go in and write a quick proof of concept for a client or whatever, and I end up just calling a guy that I know, and maybe he's the most qualified or maybe he's not, but you know, like the consultant already handles all the billing, the client relationship piece, and just says, I need the most qualified, or not the most qualified, a seriously qualified guy to do blank. You know, and it's worth the money at that point to just cut straight to the guy and be done with it. But
Well, I guess, Joel, that's another good point is basically if somebody's really good, you end up with people like Brent, right? Where they basically just start their own consulting company because why would they need to go through a gigs board when they're that good, right?
Mm-hmm.
People will go to them and then they just cut out the middleman because why do you need the middleman? So that almost implies that if you're really good and you're getting these gigs because you're good, eventually you're only going to get sort of the second and third tier players through this model, right? Because the really good ones are going to say, look, I'm going to set up a consulting firm or join with, like Brent, you have other people working with you now, right?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
that model. So it's almost like, I wonder, because we've talked about this for careers, because employers will occasionally come to us and say, oh, we don't have a full-time position, but we have this thing we need done. And you know, there's some prior art for this. But I don't know.
Find it, though? I mean, this is what's beautiful about the Stack Exchange and the SEO model is that people find me because of my blog. I've been writing about SQL Server for about 10 years now. But it's not that I'm that good. It's just that I'm fairly well SEO'd, and I put in my time, and I'm decently good. I know guys way better than me that are like struggling to go from one job to the next. That, you know, they have to go through interview after interview, and like, well, it's because nobody knows who you are. You don't work, you don't answer questions or whatever. And then I look at Stack Exchange and I go, oh my God, there's DBAs on here on DBA, Stack Exchange, or guys on Server Fault that I've never met in person. Yet they can go toe to toe with anybody at a conference that I run into. I'm like, how do I get them? You know, how do they get into a consulting?
Sure. Well, sure, and that is the model, right? We're trying to elevate and show off the knowledge of these people. It's like, you know, we don't own the information. You lend it to us. You lend it to the world, and it's really about how awesome you are. Yeah. And this is also, Joel, one of the reasons when the Chaos group was like, oh, we got to control Twitter. I was like, well, why don't you guys control your own Twitter and make yourselves awesome, right? Like, why? Like, to me, the whole philosophy of the network is about making you awesome. It's not about making our sites awesome, and we are awesome by association with you. And that's the thing that we're really building on. It's like, you know, it's more than about the site. It's about the individual people. And, you know, again, it goes directly to your bottom line. If it's, you know, I know gaming isn't necessarily a career, but like on Server Fault, all your questions, or dba.stack exchange, which we have, you know, that's hireable information, right? You can say, you don't think I'm any good? Well, go to DBA Stack Exchange and just view what I've written and see if it makes sense to you. You'll be like, wow, this guy really knows, or gal really know what they're talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it's hard for, like, as a database administrator, a DBA guy, you know, I wrote my own blog for a long time and kind of led up to that, answering questions on my own blog to say, all right, here's a post on how to do something or whatever. Then I go to Stack Exchange and I'm like, oh my God, there's some beautiful answers on here. I'd love to meet the guy who wrote this. You know, I'd love to talk to this so-and-so. Every now and then I get lucky and I get to do them at conferences, but it's hit or miss. Yes. So anyway, so that was actually tied into the last thing in the session that we talked about was the old rule was you had to keep your secret. Nobody ever talked about what database platform they were on, and heaven forbid you ever ask a question in public, because then people will know you don't know what you're doing. Yeah,
especially if it reveals a security bug that is going to be used to compromise a bunch of bank accounts.
Yeah, and then that's changing. But everybody's putting not everybody, but there's a slow revolution of people saying, okay, I'm going to post my question out here. You know, I'm going to blog the solution to this problem that I ran into. I know so many DBAs who weren't allowed to present at conferences. Right. Because, their companies didn't want them to, no, you can't tell them anything we've learned. That's against the rules.
A lot of people are still afraid to use their real name on Stack Overflow.
Yeah. That's not my real name.
Well, there's also the poaching thing. There's been some concern.
Your real name is Ozar Brent.
Yes, nobody will ever forget that.
Nobody will ever forget that. You get the backwards and the forwards and the
presto.
I mean, do you think poaching? I mean, Joel, you do more with hiring than I do. Do you think poaching is a real concern? Like somebody would post something, and then, you know, your competitors would learn you have this really good person working for you, and then we come in with like an offer you can't refuse. you know. How would you like to make $1 million a year or something crazy like that?
So one of the things I've learned, I've been reading all the pages in Wikipedia on personality disorders, and it turns out that they're really interesting. Really, just start with personality disorder and just dig your way down. And apparently, most executives, and I include myself in this, are indistinguishable from people in an insane asylum. Executives, especially at startups, are no more mentally healthy than the average population of an insane asylum. And I don't have a citation for that, but it came from Wikipedia, so I trust the Wiccans.
We're all crazy. I believe you. I mean, what else can be said? It's obviously true.
And one particular form of craziness is paranoia. And and I think that particular form of like, oh my God, somebody's going to steal my people. I mean, I got emails from people saying, I'm not sending people to the Stack Overflow conference.
Yeah.
They're going to get poached. They're
going to find somewhere where they might actually become happy. Yeah.
Right. It's better that they not know about that place somehow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so sad.
Yeah, Dan in the chat room says basically a real competitor is going to find your people, and the only you're not going to prevent them from finding out, or you're not going to prevent them from leaking based on lack of information. You have to make the work environment and the way that you treat the people and the way that you let them get stuff done.
It's the equivalent of security through obscurity, and just ask any sysadmin how well that works.
Yep. Yeah. It's security. It's actually security through like, oh, I never told anybody that URL.
It can work if you're Apple. To be fair, I mean, it does actually work.
That's not true. I can hire people. You want to see how easy it is to hire away people from Apple? You just go to the Starbucks across the street in Cupertino. It's not hard. It is true. Somebody in the chat room said Apple used to put dev names in the about dialogue very, very, very long time ago, that they would put names of people in the about dialogue.
Feeling Johnny Ives is just like a janitor somewhere. He doesn't actually do design.
Not the real person. Not the real person. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I can feel the employer's concern in that. That's how I got started in consulting. I used to work for Request Software as a SQL Server evangelist, and they invested a lot of money in promoting me as an expert. I was able to piggyback off of that and dive off into consulting. But they still, they get the value of it. They keep hiring experts, so there's a value for the company too as well.
People still go on a quest in hopes of working with Brent O.
So people still come to me thinking they're going to get a software discount. Yeah. You know people, right? You can answer my support question. No.
Well, I got to tell you that, Joel, in my view, I hope that a lot of people that work for Stack Exchange go on to start their own companies eventually and do kind of like what you and I are doing. Like, my view of this is I want to build up the people that work for me so they can go on to do great things too, right?
Yeah.
This is the part of everyone's path. And that's when we talked about, like, Joel put up that blog post.
Jason Punyon. Somebody want to get his email address?
We hate to see him go because he's really good.
Yeah, but I mean, here it is. It's J Punyon at stackexchange.com. Punyo. I'm sorry. Who's laughing over there? Oh, that's Jason. Sorry.
Yeah.
What?
Nothing. Oh. Nothing. We just mentioned you on the podcast, maybe.
Wait, it's a meme. It's a podcast bingo token, I believe.
No, we're just trying to get you a job.
We should print up actual podcast bingo cards and distribute
them. It was done for the old podcast. They're out there. In fact, I think there's a blog entry that has one.
What was on that? I don't remember.
Just search for it, Alex. I think it's out there. It's
usually
just old.
Jeff not listening to something Joel said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a good digression. I do want to point out there's a really good blog server fault entry called "Why Stack Exchange Isn't in the Cloud" that I thought is a good bookend to because Brent was saying that basically everybody's the DBA. That's one of the advantages of this model, and that is the way we look at it. Like, you don't have your database guy. It's like performance is everybody's job. Everybody should know enough of the stack that they can troubleshoot the performance to a reasonable level.
Yeah. And
this is taking that mechanic and applying it to the hardware. Well, why not just put your database in the cloud? Why not just rent servers? And I know we've touched on this before, but I really liked Kyle's take on this, which is it's about passion. It's about we're getting a lot of mic noise again. It's about interest in and love of the topic, right? Like, the reason we do this stuff, even though it's kind of a pain in the butt to do it the way that we do it, is because we love it so much. We want to control every little piece of it. And I thought that was a nice way to frame the discussion versus just money. It's like, okay, well, money versus how many sysadmins you need. Well, that's not really the point. That's not why we get up in the morning, because this is $100,000 less. It's like, we get up because we love this stuff and we love playing with the hardware.
It's also, I don't think, one of the things which I have friends who have things on the cloud, and then they'll put something on some cloud-like thing, and then 99% of the time the performance will be amazing, it'll be great. And then who on earth is eating? Is that you, Alex?
I'm not eating.
But you're still making noise.
I don't know if he's rolling over bubble.
Is he in the cloud?
What that is.
Do we have a way?
I think it's just the mic hitting my shirt. I'll mute.
Yeah.
Yay.
Awesome.
See that mute button? Break off the little toggle on the switch once you get it into the off position, so you don't hit it by mistake ever in the next 6 months. I forgot altogether. Building our own servers. I had friends that were working on a large public website. I mean, a very, very large website that was using maybe Google App Engine or something like that. And it had good performance characteristics, except once in a while it would be unbearably slow. And they were doing basic stuff, and they had no way of debugging it, and they literally went over to Google and talked to the engineers, and the Google engineers told them about some magic setting where they could turn on some magic beta thing that wasn't yet live, and it would do some sophisticated thing in some slightly different and obscure way that no regular human being could ever understand or was expected to, right? Because you're calling an API that's like, add 2 numbers, and it works great 99 times, and then once it just doesn't add them or something. So
I get so nervous with that whole having somebody else control the whole stack. I mean, you're really the database are coming under pressure from 2 angles. One of them is the cloud, in that you pays your money and you takes your chances, and it's a total vendor lock-in. But they take care of everything for you.
Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. They really take care of everything.
Yeah, they take care of it. It's sort of like it's just sort of like kind of Kmart quality, or like
lowest common denominator.
You know what it is? It's like FedEx. It's like 99% of the time it gets there overnight, unless you're in New York, in which case it never gets there overnight. And then 1% of the time it just takes 3 days. And you're like, what the hell? And there was nothing you could do about it. And if it's a kidney and your life depended on it, tough. Because everything about FedEx is utterly and completely obscure. You don't know where the package is, except that it's probably in East Rahway, New Jersey. Actually, you do know the package is. It just doesn't help. There's nothing you could do about it.
Right.
So somebody asked, there's a good question which I want to address, which is John Galloway asked, where do you draw the line? Do you build your own power supplies like Google does? Do you write your own database engine like a bunch of really crappy software? I think there's an easy answer as to where you draw the line. You figure out what your value add is as a company. What's the thing that you do? What's the most important thing that you do? If you're a bank, you store people's money in the form of bits. If you're a gardening firm, you do gardening. If you're a website, you host web servers. If you're Stack Overflow, you host Stack Overflow. That's the thing that you got to get right. And for that one thing, for that core mission where you're adding the most value to the world, you don't buy the tool at the correct level of abstraction. You go one level too low. I'm repeating myself. Didn't I say this on the last podcast?
Possibly, but it's worth repeating.
Yeah. All right, John. You're not listening to enough podcasts.
A lot in general.
See, this is why you want Alex muted, isn't it?
Told you,
he speaks the truth. Mute him.
For everything
That's okay.
else,
we all repeat ourselves. It's
for
fine.
everything else, you go out and you
no
buy the off-the-shelf abstraction. So we here at Stack, we have very nice lunches, but we don't really. That's not our thing. We're not a restaurant. Our thing is software, and so we just have a good catering company come in and we buy it off the shelf, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And it's not going to make or break us.
That is a core value. I mean, your whole thing about lunch and
it's a core value, but it's not where we add value. Like it's sure it's important to have high quality lunch. That's okay, but if they screw it up, it's not our product that's screwed up. It's just our lunch that's screwed up.
Well, but I think in a way the core value isn't that we have a really good lunch. It's that we give all these really great employee benefits. And so all those employee benefits are defined by the company. We don't go to someone else and say like, oh, what cool things should we give our employees? Like we decide what it should be, but we don't build their desks for them because it's not our core competency to build desks and we can't do it as well as Steelcase can.
Right. But we do build our own servers, so.
Well, there's also this twisted thing around developers, and that developers, because they have the ability to build software, they think I can build a better piece of software than the one I'm using. If we were carpenters, we would be trying to build our own workbenches, which is what carpenters do.
Yes.
But you get to the point where you don't build your own power saw. You got to know the level there.
You got to know what level of abstraction to stop at, and that is, my rule of thumb: one level below whatever thing it is that you're selling, where you're adding the most value.
Yeah, don't the whole building your own database. Like that whole idea.
Can I get a macro button for that on my computer? So every time I have to give that speech, Kevin points out that I blogged about it 11 years ago.
You could probably post it on a Stack Exchange site somewhere. I also noticed a little money quote. I was scrolling
John
through
Galloway.
Brent's blog. It says, because we were talking about SQL pricing, and this is a great quote because it pretty much explains the problem with SQL pricing in one sentence. 1 terabyte of memory is cheaper than the SQL licensing. Now, 1 terabyte of memory is like 50 grand.
Yeah, that's probably the working set of all of FogBug's On Demand, if I'm not.
Yeah, we don't have, our biggest server is 96 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for reference, this is big money you're talking, and this is just for the privilege of running. This is now, granted, this is SQL Server Enterprise, but they do tie certain features to it that you may or may not want.
It's still, I mean, it's still not make and break for. I mean, the price is just not that big an issue for us on SQL. The thing about SQL Server is that if you ever get to the point where throwing hardware at the problem is not going to fix it, then you have a discontinuity in how much development work you have to do, because suddenly you have to start thinking about how to shard or separate things. And that is all of a sudden becomes a billion times harder. You got to go through every line of code and figure out.
Plenty of fish ran into that. In fact, the guy Marcus Friend, who was going to speak at our conference, which we didn't have, I was really looking forward to that. But he did run into that, where his Plenty of Fish database, he uses SQL, got to a certain size where he was spending like $100K on servers because he had to. He couldn't not, right?
Marcus Friend.
Friend.
F-R-I-N-T. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's a difference between, so there's a public website circle where databases of a certain size are considered big, but I work with a lot of clients who do 10, 15, 20 terabyte data warehouses all on a single SQL server, all on one database, and you get to that environment and their checks become really big. I've got one client who has a standing order with his local HP reseller, and whenever their new next biggest x64 server comes out, he has to have it immediately. Not as an option, he has to have it.
This is like a guy running in front of a bear.
Exactly, yes. He's writing checks as fast as he can, knowing that, and it's still cheaper than re-architecting their existing software, and they know what it would cost to do that, but as long as they can keep running in front of that bear, they're doing it. But there's features in the new version of 2012 and Enterprise Edition that I get are worth the money that they're asking for it. They're phenomenal features that help you scale out.
I don't think that's why SQL is driving up the price. I think why Microsoft is raising the price. I think they're raising the price because you need fewer boxes.
No. They're raising it because they're
greedy.
raising it because they're one hair under Oracle and under DB2.
No.
And there's no other competition in the pay-to-play database environment until you go all the way down to open source.
How much is but I mean, hasn't this been a long-term trend of the price per core sort of gradually going up with every new release?
It wasn't significant in 2005, but it was, I want to say, 10-20% in 2008. 2008 R2, they brought out a new edition that was $60,000 a socket for data center edition if you wanted big iron.
Yeah.
So they got rid of that in 2012. So it kind of depends on how you slice and dice the numbers. They'll come out and tell you that it's still roughly the same as long as you're running quad cores, but man, geez, as soon as you go beyond that, it's getting pretty ugly. But it's still competitive with Oracle, so I get where they're.
We like the Microsoft stack, and one of the things we do is occasionally we evangelize the stack because people ask us, "Oh my gosh, you're a startup and you use Microsoft? That's crazy, right?" Because it is actually. It's actually quite unusual. See a large website that's a little bit startup-like using Microsoft technologies, and I have to explain to them, look, it's actually not that expensive, and then I have to put a big asterisk there. It's not that expensive. Except for SQL Server, and I tell them, like, look, if you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. Like, and they're like, oh, you're full of crap. And I actually did this on Serverfile. I was like, okay, here's the link to the pricing, and the guy was like, oh my god, he's like, you weren't kidding. That's like, wow.
Yeah, if you haven't looked, it's $6,874 per core for Enterprise Edition, and that's up from about $28,000 a socket for Enterprise Edition. Now, granted, most people don't run Enterprise Edition, but it's when you get into the scale, which is you guys, which is most of my clients, that's what most of the big shops are running. If you're at a terabyte or above, you probably want to be on Enterprise.
But the converse of that is also true, where if you're doing a little startup and you're doing just light database work, really the server costs, I mean, first you can get BizSparks, you don't have to pay anything for 2 or 3 years or whatever it is. And then when you do, the server licenses really are just chump change. It doesn't matter. It's like $1,000 a server. Who cares? It's like not money that's even worth talking about. And then of course you get the .NET stack, you get Visual Studio, all that stuff. It's just not really that expensive relative to how much human beings cost to pay.
Right. If you were going to write your own database, even if
it's noise, but you do have to be careful on the database side. That's the only caveat I put on that.
Yeah, I still think I'm pretty confident. I see a lot of other startups that wind up using a lot more hardware. I'm not saying this is a requirement or there's just some. All I'm saying, I'm going to make a sort of light argument that there exist a lot of startups that build things sloppily and think that they're saving money by using open source,
Open
or
source,
pleased with themselves at how they don't have to buy Windows licenses and SQL Server licenses, and then they have 10 times the hardware per page view as some certain other companies.
Now, and on the flip side of that too, you got to be smart about when you peel out stuff that doesn't belong in SQL Server. And I talked about in the session, you guys as full text, for example. I mean, it's one of those things SQL Server does. It just doesn't do it really well.
Yeah.
You don't want to write that check.
That is still a pain for programmers, which is that it's almost impossible to get. Let's just put it this way: it is impossible to do full text search as well as Google does, and everybody is used to Google, and so people's standards for the speed and the accuracy of full text search, basically what people expect, you as a programmer outside of Google can never live up to, even inside of Google. Like you can't even search Gmail because you don't have PageRank and all that kind of stuff. Even searching, I'm getting a hand. Oh, 5 minutes. Got it. Sorry. I didn't realize that we had a time limit.
Just giving you the high five.
I'm getting the high five over there.
So, Joel, I had two little experiments I ran that are worth discussing.
Okay.
One thing I had in my ORDEV slide was that we're doing on Stack Exchange really a form of science. And I really got this from skeptics. I never really thought of it this way, but on the skeptic site, they're really strict about references, because you're trying to debunk myths and stuff like that and things people think are true but they actually aren't. And, opinions don't really cut it. It's either, I think, direct experience that can be documented as valid, unlike Wikipedia, in my opinion, or, a valid citation to another site. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never really thought of it that way. But then I was answering a question on gaming about Battlefield, which I know. And the question was, as an engineer, you can get this little robot that disarms bombs for you and it can repair stuff. And the way it works is you press 4 and you have a little controller. And you press the button and then you drive the robot around and you use the camera. It's as if you're in the robot, right? Mm-hmm. And the question was, well, what is the range of this robot? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what the range of this robot is, right? Like I've driven it around, I've done stuff with it, but I haven't
You mean
I don't know.
At some point the robot just says,
yeah, maybe there's too much range. That makes sense, right? Yeah. Like in the real world, if you tried to drive a robot around the world, I'm guessing that wouldn't work. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know. So you know what I had to do? I realized I had to do science. I had to go to a server, spawn as an engineer, get the robot, go to the far end of the map, and then drive it as far as I could.
Straight.
And now I want to point out, this was a pain in the ass, right? I only did this because I loved the game and I was curious, right? But this was real science. I was like, I'm going to run an experiment. And one of the reasons our sites, like when you think about like asking questions, answering questions, they're more work than other sites because we do actually want you to do a little bit of science. We don't want you to say, oh, I think the range is, one map. It's like, well, prove it, right? Like, what's your citation for saying the range of this robot is, 100 meters or whatever? Why do you say that? I mean, it's easy to post opinions because it doesn't take any work, right? You just have an opinion, and it's your opinion because, well, it's your opinion. But if I have to go, do a little experiment, it was work. But, and that's the philosophy of the network. That's what I'm trying to teach people is like, hey, if we invest this effort, that's now the canonical answer for that question, I think, on the internet. Because who else has run this freaking experiment that I did?
Yeah.
So that was a fun experiment. The other experiment I did was, remember how we talked about taking a famous person that has a question and transplanting their question to one of our sites? Well, I did that today with Philip Greenspun of Philip.
Yes, Philip Ars Digita, and he's now a helicopter flight instructor.
Right. Well, he had, I thought, a very interesting question about his computer. The title is "Where is energy stored in my PC?" And it was about booting his computer. There was some weird power surge, and basically he had to power his PC off for a significant amount of time to get it to boot reliably.
Because there's a capacitor there on the motherboard that's
or something. But he was like, "Why is this happening?" I was like, "That's really interesting." So I took the entire question, I literally just pasted it with some formatting on SuperUser as, why does my PC successfully boot only when unplugged for more than a few minutes? Because I didn't know the answer to this. I was like, well, this is interesting. I've seen things like this, but I was just like, okay, the power supply's failing or, some other thing. And it got this was posted 3 hours ago. It'll hopefully be in the show notes. And it got really pretty good answers, I think. I don't want to say canonical, but quite good. Much better than I expected. It's question 360-363 on SuperUser.
360-363.
Link was in chat.
I did post it as anonymous user Phil G.
Oh, I see. I was looking for you.
No. I want to post anonymously. I don't want to be influenced by my presence on the question.
Interesting. Very clever. Yes.
But I got some good answers. I think those were reasonable answers.
That was just
one
my
answer
opinion.
I didn't like, but two that were, I thought, quite good.
Overcharged capacitors. much like my credit cards.
There's also something on PCs. I'm sorry, we didn't mean to talk about the question. That's a typical digression for us. This is not a conversation. I'm getting the wrong level of abstraction here. We're talking about the question. We're not actually talking about the question.
This is an experiment. Like, we do this because, like, are our sites actually working?
Yeah.
I mean, do they work? Do if you post a question, and not as a famous person, as a random person on the internet, do you get a good answer? And this is proof that it really does work. Now, I will say that this is a well-written question because it's, Philip Greenspun. He's going to write well. But that's a standard in the universe. If you put effort into the question, you tend to get better answers. So that's okay.
Well, I'll tell you, I used to have to, with the SQL Server blog, I used to continually respond to readers' questions directly through email. And now I just have a canned template in my email saying, post this on DBA.Stack Exchange or Server Fault or Stack Overflow. Or once you haven't gotten an answer back in 2 days, contact me. And if it still needs attention, I'll be glad to help out. And it's maybe 1 in 10 that people ever respond back to me and say, I didn't get it. 9 times out of 10, it's, oh, yep, I got the answer that I was looking for. And the 1 time out of 10, it's a poorly written question.
That's awesome. And the benefit, I want to be clear that, like, there's benefit to you and there's benefit to the world, right, to do it that way.
Yeah.
Because first of all, who wants to answer all these friggin' email questions?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And second, like, once it gets answered, if you did answer an email, it's siloed. Who else is going to see or benefit from that information?
Yeah, that's so frustrating.
Yeah, encouraging people to do it. And again, we try to be very low friction. You don't have to register even. Like, I didn't have to register. I just went Google incognito mode, and I typed, pasted in my question and clicked submit. That's all I did. No sign up, no registration, none of that stuff. And if you want to answer a question, it's the same way. So that's the attraction. It's like, as the alternative to email, it's like, that's why we try to keep it really low friction.
But you got to teach the guy to fish. I mean, you've got to teach the person to say, even just the art of asking the question is going to force you to do a better job of your job.
Yep. That's right. And the advantage of the email, too, is, like, they've kind of written it up already. It's like, well, just take this and kind of, paste it in. You don't have to redo all the work. Just maybe add some formatting or whatever and do that. But I've done that. In fact, one of our investors emailed me because some guy was emailing him about a business idea that had to do with browser fingerprinting. And I was like, that's actually interesting. But I would much rather answer it or see it as a programmer or Stack Exchange question. I was like, how would you do browser fingerprinting? What's some practical techniques? How do they work? Pros and cons, downsides. I thought that would be a programmer's question personally, but I guess I could see it on security maybe.
You see everything as a programmer's question problem. There's also it's benefiting the guy on the other end, who's answering the questions. It's forcing a lot of these guys are trying to get more experience up, sharpen their skills, see different kinds of problems. So I'm like, look, everybody wins there, including me, because I don't have to answer the question because I'm busy right now. That's
right. Well, good plan. I wish more people thought that way.
Absolutely.
This has been Stack Exchange. Okay, I'm going to just end this here. This has been about an hour.
I love you, man. I love you, man.
Brent, where do people find you on the interwebs?
BrentOzar.com. And either that or if you follow me on Twitter, I'm Brento on Twitter.
I'm Brento on Twitter. That's just the @ sign, which looks like a circle with a lowercase a in it. Brent and the letter O.
Yes.
And BrentOzar.com. And if you scroll down a little bit on your blog there, and we'll post a link in the show notes, you'll find an awesome video in which you explain all the things that we do here at the Stack Exchange to make SQL Server really fast by not hitting it usually.
Works every time.
And so that's worth reading. Next week. Now, I know I've said this 3 times, but I'm going to say it one more time. Next week.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Okay, I'm not going to say it. Next week, we're going to have Alex Miller with the mute button somehow, hopefully repaired. He's got it taped together with duct tape.
Yeah, tape, Joel. Yeah, tape.
I'm just counting the days until Alex stops working for a company now.
It's really the half-life of Alex. He is in California right now. Who knows if he comes back. Thanksgiving is coming up.
Alex, you can come move in with me, and you can assist me in the things that I do. How's that sound?
Translation: you want a free nanny to take care of your upcoming show?
No. Well, maybe. No, are you offering?
No. Trust me. Look at me with a child, and you will not want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So it's been Stack Exchange podcast number 28, huh?
It sure has. And next week, I'm not going to say who we have next week. Thanksgiving is coming up. For those of you Americans, this is where we give thanks for stuff. And so that will be tomorrow. So things are going to be real quiet. This is usually like one of the quietest days of the year on the network. Actually, Christmas is worse because they celebrate that even in not America for some reason, which is... check out Gaming Stack Exchange if you play Skyrim, gaming.stackexchange.com. I'm really out of things to promote, so see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Brett.
Bye, Brent.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now what happens?